Hello, and welcome. Today, we are going to talk about one of the oldest and most fascinating civilizations in the world, India. India has a history that goes back more than 4,000 years. It is a land of great empires, powerful religions, beautiful buildings, and important ideas that have spread across the whole world. Let us start from the very beginning. The story of India begins around 2500 BC, with one of the world's first great civilizations, the Indus Valley Civilization. This civilization grew up along the Indus River, in the area that is now Pakistan and northwest India. The people of the Indus Valley built large, well-planned cities. The two most famous cities were called Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. These cities had straight streets, organized in a grid pattern, like a checkerboard. They had brick houses, and most amazingly, they had advanced systems for water and waste, almost like early plumbing. This was extremely advanced for its time, more than 4,000 years ago. The Indus Valley people also created their own form of writing, but historians today still cannot read it. It remains a mystery. Around 1900 BC, this civilization slowly declined. The reasons are not completely clear. Perhaps the rivers changed course, or the climate became drier. But the Indus Valley civilization laid an important foundation for the cultures that followed. After the decline of the Indus Valley cities, a new period began, called the Vedic period, starting around 1500 BC. During this time, groups of people who spoke an early form of the Sanskrit language settled across northern India. These people created the Vedas, a collection of religious texts, hymns, and poems. The Vedas are some of the oldest religious writings in the world, and they form the foundation of Hinduism, one of the world's oldest religions, which today has over 1 billion followers. During this period, Indian society became organized into different groups based on occupation and birth. This system later developed into what is called the caste system, a way of dividing society into different social groups. This system would shape Indian society for thousands of years, and parts of it still influence India today, though modern laws now try to reduce its effects. Around the 6th century BC, two new religions appeared in India that would have an enormous impact on the world. The first was Buddhism, founded by a prince named Siddhartha Gautama, who became known as the Buddha, meaning the Enlightened One. He taught that suffering comes from desire, and that people can find peace through meditation and a moral way of life. The second was Jainism, founded by a teacher named Mahavira, who taught nonviolence toward all living things. Both religions spread widely across Asia and are still practiced by millions of people today. Around 321 BC, a young man named Chandragupta Maurya built the first great empire to unite most of India. This was called the Maurya Empire. It was a large, well-organized state with a strong army, good roads, and an efficient system of government. The most famous Maurya ruler was Chandragupta's grandson, Emperor Ashoka, who ruled from about 268 to 232 BC. At first, Ashoka was a fierce warrior. He fought a terrible war to conquer a region called Kalinga, and many thousands of people died. But after seeing the suffering this war caused, Ashoka had a change of heart. He converted to Buddhism and decided to rule with kindness instead of violence. Ashoka built hospitals, planted trees along roads for travelers, and ordered the construction of wells for clean water. He had messages about kindness, tolerance, and good behavior carved onto huge stone pillars across his empire. Some of these pillars still exist today. Ashoka sent Buddhist missionaries to other countries, including Sri Lanka and parts of Southeast Asia, helping Buddhism spread far beyond India. He is remembered as one of the greatest and most humane rulers in world history. After several centuries of smaller kingdoms, a new empire arose around 320 AD, the Gupta Empire. This period is often called the Golden Age of India because of the incredible achievements in science, mathematics, art, and literature. During the Gupta period, Indian mathematicians made discoveries that changed the world. They developed the concept of zero as a number, and they created the decimal number system, the system of numbers from 0 to 9 that almost everyone in the world uses today. This number system later traveled to the Arab world and then to Europe, which is why we sometimes call them Arabic numerals, but they actually originated in India. Indian astronomers during this time calculated the length of the year with remarkable accuracy and understood that the Earth is round and rotates on its axis. discoveries made centuries before similar ideas became common in Europe. Beautiful art, sculpture, and literature also flourished during this period. Sanskrit poetry and drama reached new heights, and magnificent cave temples, carved directly into rock, were created, some of which still amaze visitors today. Over the centuries, India was both a target for invaders and a magnet for traders, because of its wealth, spices, and beautiful goods. From around the 8th century onward, traders and travelers brought Islam to India, mainly through the northwest. In 1206, a new kind of state was established in northern India, called the Delhi Sultanate. This was a series of Muslim dynasties that ruled large parts of northern India for over 300 years. During this period, many new ideas, art styles, and architectural techniques arrived in India from Persia and Central Asia. Cities grew, and a rich mixing of cultures, Hindu and Muslim, Indian and Central Asian, produced a unique new civilization. This period was not always peaceful. There were many wars between different rulers and kingdoms. But it also created a lasting cultural blend that you can still see in Indian music, food, language, and architecture today. In 1526, a new and very powerful empire began, the Mughal Empire. It was founded by a leader named Babur, who came from Central Asia and was a descendant of both Genghis Khan and Timur, two of history's most famous conquerors. Babur defeated the last ruler of the Delhi Sultanate and established Mughal rule in India. The Mughal Empire reached its greatest height under a series of remarkable emperors. One of the most famous was Akbar, who ruled from 1556 to 1605. Akbar was known for his religious tolerance. He tried to bring Hindus and Muslims together peacefully, and he was deeply interested in art, literature, and different religious traditions. Under Akbar, the empire became wealthy, stable, and culturally rich. Perhaps the most famous Mughal emperor is Shah Jahan, who ruled in the 1600s. Shah Jahan's wife, Mumtaz Mahal, died during childbirth, and Shah Jahan was heartbroken. To honor her memory, he ordered the construction of one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, the Taj Mahal. It took over 20 years to build and used white marble decorated with precious stones. Today, the Taj Mahal is one of the most recognized symbols of India and is visited by millions of tourists every year. The Mughal Empire was incredibly wealthy and produced extraordinary art, architecture, poetry, and music. But by the early 1700s, the empire began to weaken. There were succession struggles, fights over who would become the next emperor, and the empire slowly lost control over its vast territories. This created an opportunity for a new and very different power to enter India, a power that came not from land, but from the sea. In 1600, a group of English merchants formed a trading company called the British East India Company. At first, they simply wanted to trade, to buy spices, cotton, silk, and tea, and sell them in Europe for high profits. They built trading posts along the Indian coast. But over time, as the Mughal Empire weakened, the East India Company became more ambitious. The company built its own army, made alliances with local rulers, and slowly began taking control of Indian territory. By the mid-1700s, the company controlled large parts of India, not through the British government, but as a private business with its own soldiers. This was an unusual and troubling situation. A commercial company, focused on making profit, was effectively ruling over millions of people. The company collected taxes, controlled trade, and made political decisions, often putting profit ahead of the well-being of Indian people. This period caused great hardship for many Indians, including devastating famines in some regions. In 1857, a major uprising occurred. Indian soldiers working for the East India Company, called sepoys, rebelled against the company's rule. The rebellion spread across northern India and lasted over a year. It is known as the Indian Rebellion of 1857 or the Sepoy Mutiny. Although the rebellion was eventually defeated, it shocked the British government. As a result, in 1858, the British government took direct control of India away from the East India Company. India officially became part of the British Empire, a period known as the British Raj. Under the British Raj, which lasted from 1858 to 1947, India was ruled directly by Britain. The British built railways, telegraph lines, and a large administrative and legal system across India. Some of this infrastructure was useful and is still in use today. However, British rule also caused enormous problems. Wealth was taken out of India and sent to Britain. Traditional Indian industries, like textile making, were damaged because British factories could produce cloth more cheaply. Severe famines occurred during British rule and millions of people died, partly because of policies that prioritized exporting food over feeding the local population. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, more and more Indians began to demand self-government, the right to rule themselves. A political organization called the Indian National Congress was formed in 1885 to represent Indian interests and push for greater rights. In the early 1900s, a lawyer named Mohandas Gandhi returned to India after working in South Africa, where he had developed a method of protest based on nonviolence. Gandhi became the most important leader of the Indian independence movement. Gandhi believed that India should gain independence through peaceful means, without violence, using methods like boycotts, peaceful marches, and civil disobedience, which means refusing to follow unjust laws in a peaceful way. One of his most famous actions was the Salt March in 1930. The British government had a law that gave them control over salt production and taxed it heavily. Gandhi led a 24-day march to the sea, where he and his followers made their own salt, breaking the law peacefully to protest against it. This event inspired millions of Indians and brought worldwide attention to the independence movement. Gandhi's approach, nonviolent resistance, became famous around the world and later inspired other civil rights leaders, including Martin Luther King Jr. In the United States, Gandhi became known as Mahatma, which means great soul. World War II put enormous pressure on Britain. After the war, Britain was weakened economically and could no longer maintain its huge empire. The demand for Indian independence had become too strong to resist. On August 15, 1947, India became independent. It was a moment of enormous joy and celebration after nearly 90 years of direct British rule and almost 200 years of East India Company influence before that. But independence came with a tragedy. Before the British left, India was divided into two separate countries. India, which would be mainly Hindu, and Pakistan, which would be mainly Muslim. This division is called partition. The borders were drawn quickly, and millions of people suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of the new border, based on their religion. In the months around partition, an estimated 10 to 15 million people had to leave their homes and move across the new borders, Hindus and Sikhs moving to India, and Muslims moving to Pakistan. The violence that occurred during this migration was horrific. Hundreds of thousands of people, some estimates say up to 1 million, were killed in religious violence. It remains one of the largest and most painful mass migrations in human history, and its effects are still felt in the region today. Tragically, Gandhi himself was assassinated in January 1948, just months after independence, by a man who disagreed with his views on religious tolerance between Hindus and Muslims. After independence, India became the world's largest democracy. Jawaharlal Nehru became India's first prime minister and led the country for its first 17 years, focusing on building industry, education, and a modern democratic system. India faced many challenges in its early decades: poverty, a growing population, and tensions with neighboring Pakistan, including several wars. But India also made remarkable progress. It built one of the largest democracies in the world, with hundreds of millions of people voting in elections. In 1991, India made major changes to its economy, opening up to international trade and investment. This led to rapid economic growth over the following decades. India became a major center for technology, especially software and information technology services. Cities like Bangalore became known as global technology hubs. Today, India is the most populous country in the world, with over 1.4 billion people. It has a space program that has sent missions to the Moon and Mars. It is one of the fastest-growing major economies in the world. And it remains an extraordinarily diverse country, with hundreds of languages, multiple major religions, and incredibly varied cultures, all existing within one democratic nation. So what has India given to the world? The list is remarkably long. First, mathematics. The concept of zero and the decimal number system, which the whole world uses today, came from India. Without these ideas, modern mathematics, science, and computing would look very different. Second, religion and philosophy. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism all began in India and are practiced by over 1 billion people worldwide. Ideas like meditation, yoga, and nonviolence have spread across the globe and influenced how millions of people live their lives. Third, architecture and art. From ancient cave temples to the Taj Mahal, India has produced some of the most beautiful buildings in the world. Indian art, sculpture, textiles, and design have influenced cultures across Asia and beyond. Fourth, the idea of nonviolent resistance. Gandhi's approach to political change, peaceful protest instead of violence, has inspired movements for civil rights and independence all around the world. Fifth, food and culture. Indian cuisine, with its spices and flavors, is loved and eaten across the entire world. Indian music, dance, and especially cinema, the huge film industry often called Bollywood, reach audiences of hundreds of millions of people every year. We began with the planned cities of the Indus Valley more than 4,000 years ago. Then came the Vedic period and the birth of great religions. Powerful empires rose and fell. The Mauryas, the Guptas, the Mughals, each leaving behind incredible art, ideas, and buildings. Then came centuries of foreign trade and eventually colonial rule under Britain. And finally, through a long struggle led by figures like Gandhi, India became independent, though that freedom came with the painful tragedy of partition. Today, India stands as the world's largest democracy, home to over 1 billion people, ancient traditions, and a fast-growing modern economy. Its history is one of the longest, richest, and most complex stories in the world, and it continues to be written every single day. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope this helped you learn something new about history, about India, and about English. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.